I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you answer. Have you ever felt watched by something you couldn't see? Something that didn't make a sound? Something that seemed to breathe with the darkness itself? Because that's exactly what happened to me deep in the jungle, on a night that should have been calm, routine, completely predictable. I wasn't supposed to be afraid. I wasn't supposed to feel hunted. Back then, I thought I understood the jungle. I thought I respected it, walked through it carefully, treated it like a living being, but I was wrong. That night didn't just show me how fragile I was, it showed me that I had never truly been alone out there, not even for a second. It all started at dusk, when the air turns heavier and the hum of insects becomes a constant vibration around you. I had been hiking through that region for 3 days already, charting a route along a river that barely existed on local maps. The expedition was simple enough. Evaluate access points, document wildlife, and prepare the path for a future team. That's why I was alone. They said the area was safe. They said large animals didn't roam that part of the jungle anymore. They said nights were quiet. All lies, well, maybe not lies, but definitely not the full truth. The third day had drained every bit of energy from my legs. The humidity made every breath feel like inhaling warm fog. I remember stopping near a clearing that looked perfect for setting up camp. Flat ground, tall trees, and the soft sound of a stream nearby. In the middle of the jungle, water can save you. It can also betray you, but I didn't know that yet. I pitched my tent, hung my boots near the entrance to dry, and collected just enough wood for a small fire, not bright enough to attract unwanted attention, but warm enough to keep insects away. I remember feeling strangely calm. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the subtle idea that after 3 days alone, nothing bad had happened. The jungle had accepted me. That's what I thought. That's the kind of dangerous confidence that leads people to ignore the signs. As the sun sank behind the dense canopy, the soundscape changed. Birds quieted, insects multiplied, and underneath everything, a faint, low vibration pulsed through the ground, like something large moving far away. Back then, I dismissed it as distant thunder. Later, I'd realized thunder doesn't move like footsteps. I was halfway through eating my simple dinner, just boiled rice with some dried vegetables, when I heard the first sound. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't even loud. It was a single snap, like a branch breaking under careful weight. The kind you only notice because it doesn't match the rhythm of the forest. It was controlled, precise, deliberate. I froze with the spoon halfway between the bowl and my mouth. My ears opened, searching for more. Nothing followed. Silence took over the clearing, thicker than before. Even the insects dropped a note, like the whole jungle paused to listen with me. I slowly set the bowl aside and reached for my flashlight. I didn't turn it on. Not yet. Light is a declaration. I'm here. I didn't want to declare anything. Instead, I whispered into the quiet, more to myself than anything else. Probably just a monkey. But the truth is, monkeys don't move like that. They're chaotic, clumsy on the ground, constantly chattering. Whatever had stepped on that branch had weight. The shadows around my campfire seemed to stretch farther than usual. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned the wrong direction, I'd meet a pair of eyes staring right at me. I waited 30 minutes, maybe more, barely moving. The sound didn't repeat. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been nothing. The jungle has ways of playing with your senses after dark. The mind starts creating things, hearing shapes that don't exist. I cleaned my utensils, secured my pack inside the tent, and unrolled my sleeping bag. I don't know why, but I double-checked every zipper, every knot, every strap. Something inside me wanted the illusion of safety. When I finally lay down, I expected to fall asleep immediately. Instead, I stayed awake, listening. The jungle is never quiet, but the usual symphony felt wrong, like a song missing its melody. Then I felt something off, a shift in the air. You may think that's impossible to sense, but when you've been alone in the wilderness long enough, you learn to feel changes before they happen. I turned onto my side, opened my eyes and realized the shadows outside were moving. Not violently, not in a chaotic way, but slowly swaying, as if something was pacing around the perimeter of my camp. I held my breath and listened again. That's when I heard the second sound. Not a branch breaking this time, but a low, rhythmic exhale. Controlled. Intentional. The kind of breathing a hunter makes when it knows exactly where you are. My heart pounded so loudly inside my chest that I was sure it could hear me. I couldn't bring myself to unzip the tent. Whatever was out there, it already knew I was inside. Flashing a light would just show it that I was small, cornered, and completely unprepared to face it. Minutes passed. The breathing stopped, and that should have made me feel better, but it only made me more terrified. Silence meant movement. Silence meant planning. I stayed awake until exhaustion finally won and forced my eyes shut for a moment. Just a moment. And that's when everything escalated. Something brushed the side of my tent. Not a paw, not a hand. Something large sliding against the nylon, testing it, following its curve with slow precision. I opened my eyes wide, afraid to even blink. Whatever it was, it knew exactly where my head was. Its shadow stretched across the tent wall, long and narrow, tall enough to reach halfway to the top. I didn't breathe. I didn't swallow. I didn't think. I simply existed, frozen in place, hoping it would lose interest. But it didn't. It moved again, this time circling, dragging something along the ground. I heard leaves shift. I heard breath. I heard weight, heavy, intentional weight, being placed carefully with each step. At that point, fear turned into strategy. Every instinct inside me screamed to run, but running blind through a jungle at night isn't survival, it's self-destruction. So I stayed still, motionless, pretending to be asleep. Animals sometimes ignore what they think isn't a threat. At least that's what I tried to believe. The creature, or whatever it was, completed another circle and then stopped right at the entrance of my tent. I sensed it more than heard it. A presence pushing against the thin fabric barrier, making it flex inward slightly. I didn't dare lift my head. The only thing separating us was a cheap zipper. Then came the worst sound of the entire night. A soft, slow inhale right next to my face. It felt like it was smelling me through the tent. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was identification. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. My breathing betrayed me, quick and shallow. I pressed my lips shut so tight they hurt, doing everything I could to not let a single sound escape. The inhale repeated. Then again, it felt intelligent. I don't know how long the creature stayed there. Time stopped existing. The night stretched into something endless, a dark tunnel with no exit. When it finally stepped away, the ground trembled beneath it. That's when I realized I wasn't dealing with a predator looking for a meal. This was something territorial, something that understood the concept of boundaries, and I had camped right in the middle of its space. When the steps faded into the distance, I should have felt relief. Instead, terror grew even stronger. Because predators don't leave once they identify prey. They reposition, they wait. I knew I had to move before it returned. I unzipped the tent slowly, silently, centimeter by centimeter, wincing at every tiny sound. The air outside was still, unnaturally still. Even the insects had paused as if they too were hiding. The campfire had burned low, just faint orange embers glowing like weak eyes on the forest floor. My pack was where I left it, untouched. My boots, not so much. One of them had been dragged a few meters away. Not bitten, not torn, dragged, as if something wanted to lure me into the trees. I whispered out loud without meaning to. No, no, no. Because that was not behavior from any animal I knew. That was something else, something that wanted me to follow. I didn't. I grabbed my pack barefoot, slung it over my shoulder, and extinguished the fire completely. My breath felt too loud, my heartbeat too violent. Every shadow between the trees seemed to pulse and shift. Then I heard it again, a branch breaking, farther away this time, but too deliberate to be random. It was waiting, watching, tracking. and I realized something terrifying. I had only two choices: stay and wait for it to return, or walk into the darkness where it wanted me to go. Neither option offered safety. One only offered a slower ending. So I stepped into the jungle, barefoot, barely breathing, trying to move quietly while every leaf and twig snapped under me like firecrackers. Behind me, something stepped too. It was following. And this wasn't survival anymore. This was a hunt. I just didn't know who else was out there, or why the jungle suddenly felt like it belonged to something that didn't want me in it. I kept moving deeper into the trees, even though every instinct begged me to turn back. The darkness swallowed everything. The beam of my small flashlight barely penetrated a few steps ahead of me, and every time I lifted it, I expected to catch a reflection of eyes staring right back at me. But the jungle stayed visually empty, which somehow frightened me even more. I kept hearing soft steps behind me. Not constant. That would have been easier to track. These were intermittent, calculated, almost mimicking my own pace. When I stopped, it stopped. When I sped up, the sound would return seconds later, just far enough not to be seen. Predators don't mimic, they simply follow. This thing, it was mapping me. The ground started sloping downward, and soon I found myself descending toward the stream I had heard earlier. Water meant noise, and noise meant masking my own footsteps, an advantage I desperately needed. I crouched near the bank and stepped into the shallow flow, hoping the creature would lose the trail. For a moment, the cold water gave me relief. It grounded me, reminded me I was still alive, still thinking, still capable of making decisions. I followed the stream upstream, stepping carefully between rocks, letting the running water erase my trail. But that hope faded fast. Something stepped into the stream behind me. Not dainty steps. Heavy ones. Slow ones. Ones that made the water shiver in tiny pulses. I spun around, raising the flashlight, finally giving in to the need to see what was hunting me. Nothing. Only trees. Only darkness. Only the sound of water flowing around me. But the steps had been real. I wasn't imagining them. "Stop," I whispered. Not to it, but to myself. I needed my mind calm. I needed focus. I turned off the flashlight again and continued moving. The water masked my footsteps now, and I stayed low, keeping my silhouette below the line of shrubs and twisted branches. Then I heard something new. Not footsteps, not breathing. A low rumble, a warning, a claim of territory. It came from my left, deep in the jungle. It vibrated through the water, through the ground, through my ribs. I had never heard anything like it. No jaguar, no puma, no known animal in that region produced a sound like that. It wasn't aggressive. It was assertive, like it was telling me exactly where it stood, and exactly where I wasn't allowed to go. But I was already there. The rumble echoed again, and I realized the creature wasn't behind me anymore. It had moved ahead. It was guiding me, or hurting me. I froze, trying to decide between two impossibilities. The creature was somewhere in front of me, but going back meant walking right past where I had just heard it in the stream. So I tried something different. I climbed out of the water and crawled beneath the bushes, moving on all fours, staying close to the ground. The earth was damp, and it clung to my hands and legs as I pulled myself forward. Every leaf brushing against my skin felt like claws. Then I heard the rumble again. Closer. This time I felt warm breath move the leaves above my back. I flattened myself against the ground, pressing my cheek into the wet soil. I didn't dare lift my head. My entire body buzzed with electricity, waiting for the moment teeth or claws or hands, whatever it had, would reach for me. But instead, the creature stepped past. I heard it clearly, though I still couldn't see it. Its weight was tremendous. Leaves bent, branches snapped. The earth responded to it. It wasn't running or charging, it was simply moving, with purpose. I opened my eyes just a little, enough to see the silhouette through the vegetation. Tall, too tall, broad shoulders, elongated limbs, a shape that swayed slightly as it walked. Not like a man, not like a known animal, but like a being built for the shadows. Fluid, silent, completely adapted to its environment. Then it stopped, and it turned its head toward me. I couldn't see its face, not fully, but I saw the suggestion of eyes reflecting the faint glow of the sky through the canopy. Not bright like a predator's night vision. Dimmer, focused, aware. It stood still for several seconds, and then it walked away. Not because I had escaped, but because it wanted me to follow. And somehow that was even worse. I stayed on the ground for a long time, waiting for my senses to catch up with what I had just witnessed. My brain wanted to deny it. My fear wanted to run. And yet something deeper inside me understood. The creature wasn't chasing me randomly. It was pushing me somewhere. But where? The jungle around me grew darker, thicker, heavier. I could barely find the trail again. I moved slowly, too slowly, until the trees thinned just a little, and I stepped into a naturally carved corridor of branches and roots. The ground had been disturbed. Leaves were scattered in sweeping arcs. Something big had come through there many, many times. I felt sick. This was not an animal trail. It was a path, a used one, and I was walking on it. Far ahead, I heard another branch snap, and this time, it wasn't a warning or a test. It was a signal. It sounded like it was calling me forward. I kept going because something told me that stopping was much more dangerous than following. The creature was patient. It had let me go once. It wouldn't do it again. After several minutes, I noticed the trees opening up into a clearing. The moonlight finally reached the ground. I stepped forward slowly, scanning for movement. Then I saw them. Footprints. Not paw prints, not shoe prints. Footprints. Large, wide, almost human, but not quite. Too long, with an extra curvature along the outer edge. They circled the clearing. Over and over and over. Dozens of them. I felt my stomach twist as realization struck. This wasn't its territory. This was its ritual ground. A place where it watched, where it waited, where it chased. I had walked right into the center. I turned around to escape, and froze. Something was standing at the tree line. Not attacking, not hiding, just standing, observing. I lifted the flashlight with trembling hands and pointed it toward the shape. For a split second, the beam caught the silhouette fully. It was taller than any man I'd ever seen. Its limbs were lean but impossibly strong. Its movements were fluid, almost unnatural, as if joints didn't work the same way ours do. The light hit its face for just a moment. I saw contours, a jawline, eyes that reflected but didn't shine, a calmness that didn't match the situation at all. Then it stepped backward, letting the darkness swallow it whole. That was the moment I realized something important. It wasn't here to attack me. It was here to test me. And maybe to teach me something. Because right after it vanished, the jungle changed. The rumble stopped. The footsteps stopped. The oppressive feeling of being prey slowly faded away. The jungle accepted me again. As if the creature had given permission. I didn't wait for a second round. I left the clearing immediately, walking as fast as I could without making too much noise. And strange as it sounds, nothing followed me. No breathing, no rumbling, no movement. The jungle went back to its regular rhythm, like the night had reset itself. By the time the sun rose, I was nearly 5 kilometers, 3 miles, from where I had camped. I walked the entire night, barefoot, exhausted, but alive. The moment the first rays of light pierced through the canopy, I finally felt safe enough to stop. When I eventually returned to my team days later, I didn't tell them everything. I just said I heard something large, that I moved camps, that the jungle felt wrong. They laughed, they joked. They told me I was just tired. Maybe they're right. Or maybe they're lucky they never camped where I did. All I know is this. Something out there watched me. Something powerful. Something that understood me in a way a normal animal never could. Something that chose not to end the hunt. And whatever it was, it let me live. Not because I escaped, but because it allowed me to. And that changes everything I thought I knew about the jungle. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. I appreciate your time more than you know. If you enjoyed this experience, make sure to subscribe and share this video with someone who loves intense survival stories. Your support helps keep this channel alive and growing.